Good morning, and welcome to this fantastic panel of new kids on the block. My name is Sunil Gupta. I'm a Harvard Business School professor, and we have three excellent people on the panel. I'll let them introduce themselves as well as the company in a few moments, and of course, we'll take your questions as well. Tom Lee, he's the CEO of Galileo. He'll tell you a little bit more about the company. Susie, she's the head of strategy and partnership at Project Ronin, and Sarah Donnelly, she's the Chief Product Development Officer for Quartet Health. Fabulous group of companies doing fantastic things that you'll hear in a moment. Also wanted to let you know that these guys are literally on the run. They're at work in real time. So Tom Lee is going to step out in the middle of the session because he has a flight to catch to do something real. So this is how real time these guys work. So with that, welcome to the panel, and thank you for being here. We're also happy to take any questions from the audience, so feel free to send us the questions as we go through the process. So Tom, why don't you start with a brief introduction about you and your company? This is your second company, so tell us what's going on.
Yeah, sure. So nice to see you, and sorry I have to duck out. We're just a little bit late on the schedule, but I'm originally trained as an internist. I'm working on my third company, which is a company called Galileo. Originally, way back in the dark ages, a digital health company called Hippocrates, a high-touch primary care model called One Medical, which is scaling, and then I really wanted to spend time working on the next version of quality and cost in healthcare on a much more scalable basis, and that's what Galileo is about. So I'm a new but old kid on the block, I guess.
Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Susie Sheets. I lead strategy at Project Ronin. My background is working in strategy across the entire healthcare landscape, both at payers and providers, a bit of dabbling in policy, and then found myself really gravitating towards digital health and Project Ronin. And at Project Ronin, we believe that physicians deserve to get their hands around all of the latest data and insights, and that technology should work for them, and patients should be front and center to their care. So what we're doing at Project Ronin is solving a problem that many of you in the room may experience every day, which is that you're inundated as physicians and clinicians with data and insights, both molecular, genetic, imaging, treatment and drug decisions, and you're asked to make decisions within a shortening window of time within your visit. So what we're doing is creating a platform for physicians and their patients to help make better decisions and drive decision making. It starts with a platform that sits on top of the EHR, a lightweight interface for physicians to take data out of the EHR, re-render it in a way that's contextualized to the patient. Second, a patient engagement platform starting with symptom management. So patients, instead of waiting 3 to 4 weeks between their appointments, can fill in the gaps for their clinicians, and so that physicians have information about patients and their symptoms before they head to the ER or before they're admitted to the inpatient unit. And third, we're using all of that to create predictive models and build an intelligent, outcomes-driven model so that physicians learn and continue to learn over time to improve quality outcomes.
Sarah?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Donnelly, and I work for Quartet Health. Quartet Health is on a mission to make sure that every patient with a mental health condition gets the care that they need. 1 in 4 Americans, or probably people in general, will experience a mental health related condition at some point in their lives, and it's Quartet's mission to make sure they're connected with care. The mental health space, we can all agree, has been slow to change, slow to innovate, and difficult to navigate.
Yeah, and again, I feel terrible. I got anyway, well, we won't dwell on it. I'll tell you about Galileo. What we wanted to focus on at Galileo is, if you think about healthcare delivery for the past 100 years, it hasn't changed too much. It's still a one-on-one physician encounter in a brick and mortar setting, and we thought that given where our understanding of the body is, where our understanding of the science of the body is, and where the availability and ubiquity of data is, that a new model of care could exist that is much more digital first, multi-dimensional, and including a lot more technology in the decision-making process. So Galileo is kind of designing what we think is a broader clinical intelligence decision-making engine that kind of is offering patients a higher quality, lower cost experience in a mobile form factor. So that's one part of what we're working on. And then there's a second part of the equation that we're focusing on, which is the most complex and chronic patients. So kind of the broad arc of Galileo is how do you deliver higher quality care at much lower cost. And so when we look at the complex chronic populations, we think that there's a translation problem in the care model. And so we're really designing a high intensity home and community-based care model that really is geared against the most complex 20%.
So I'm a simple-minded patient. Help me understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve for me.
It depends on who you are as a patient. Ultimately, the goal is to provide you with accessible, higher quality, lower cost care as an individual and also to the total system, right? So most of my businesses, I like to focus on the broader question, which is what is the fundamental problem in the industry, and then how you design a consumer-oriented solution that's economically viable against that. So depending on the constituent, you're going to have a different answer.
But with all due respect, Tom, everybody says I'm going to provide better access, better quality, lower cost. Why should I believe you?
It's devil's in the details on how you build it. So, you know, there's lots of platitudes about everything. And so I think it's really about, you know, it helps being a clinician, knowing what excellence should be, and knowing how far we are as a system and the design of the system to really effectuate this on a reliable basis across a broad population on a much more cost-efficient basis. So you kind of have to know the clinical, the process, the technology, and the economics to make it work. But yeah, right now it's mostly on the whiteboard, it's mostly in early deployment, so that's the objective. I wouldn't say that we have proven it just yet, but the goal is to design a model that can scale and prove itself very definitively in another year or two. So that's kind of the time frame we're working against.
Okay. Susie, I mean, your field of oncology is very crowded. A lot of companies doing the same thing, right? Whether it's precision medicine, whether it's predictive diagnostics, Google is into it. What makes you stand out? Why would you be successful compared to all the other guys?
There's a couple key components here. So there are many, with any platform play, right? You are end-to-end across the patient journey, across the physician journey, and you're really supporting physicians and patients through every touch point. So you're going to have multiple point solutions along the journey, right? So for Ronin, the primary thing is that we are comprehensive. So we can incorporate best practices across each of the different touch points and from each of our competitors as well. But the key differentiator is that we're embedding all of these insights and data into the clinician's workflow, and that we spent hundreds of hours with clinicians, patients, their care teams, to make sure that we're building something that physicians actually love, adopt, and use. Because unless physicians are using every single day, using your platform, used to it, has a stickiness like Hippocrates, the insights mean nothing. And so you can have beautiful, beautiful models that predict outcomes, but if they're not being used or looked at the point of care when physicians are actually making decisions, then they're meaningless. And so we believe that really by designing beautiful design and by really understanding the user experience, we can therefore deploy that across the entire platform and compete across multiple players right now.
But I guess, I mean, when the VCs invest money in your startup, one of the questions that everybody asks is, what is your competitive moat? So if tomorrow Cleveland Clinic decides to get into this because they say, hey, there's an interesting idea we heard on the panel, let's do it, and we'll partner with Google or whoever else who can bring in the AI technology. What stops Cleveland Clinic and Google partnership to do what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, we believe we can do it better. We believe that we have the experience, that we have exceptional talent, and we're early, we're young. There's always the threat that a larger incumbent can come in and do that, but right now we're small enough and nimble enough that we can be more reactive, more flexible, and more agile to really understand and hear where the pain points are of physicians, really incorporate the newest and latest of what's coming down the pipeline for oncology, and address some of those issues that a larger institution may take a lot longer to turn that ship or to broach that moat.
Okay. Sarah, why mental health?
Let's see if this works. It's working, yay. Why mental health? Mental health affects every family. It affects every person. And mental health has been long overlooked in the space. At the beginning of Quartet's journey, a couple of years ago, all of our pitch decks had several slides, maybe 7 slides, trying to illustrate the connection between mental health and physical health to executives at health systems and health plans. we've really seen that shift in the past couple years, and people are starting to accept and realize the strong correlation between how you're doing with your mental health and how you're doing with your physical health. The results have proven it. Quartet's in its 5th year, and we're actually able to see that by getting patients access to the right mental health care, we're able to lower their overall total cost of care, reducing visits to the emergency department that are unnecessary, and shortening the length of stay for patients that do get admitted.
So, I mean, don't the primary care physicians know which mental health specialist to call? Why do they need you?
Some do. So I'm sure people out here today have had this experience before where you need a specialist and your doctor hands you a sheet of paper with a few numbers on it. It really puts the onus on the patient to do the heavy lifting. They have to call the provider, they have to see if they accept their particular type of insurance, they have to see if they have availability that fits their schedule. And thinking about this in the context of someone who's struggling with a mental health condition, that's a pretty big burden to place on them. So what Quartet does is take all the heavy lifting away from the patient and the provider and make sure that the first match is a good match. A lot of patients have these chronic conditions and have had some kind of interaction with mental health providers in the past, and it's not a great fit from the start. It's pretty hard to overcome the stigma to go back again. So we're trying to really make sure they get the right match the first time for their particular condition.
So, again, this is a question directed for all of you. I mean, healthcare is a... You had enough of me already? Yeah. Have a safe flight.
Sorry, thank you.
So healthcare is a very crowded space. There are a lot of startups getting into this space. What are the challenges that you face, and what are the questions that the VC is asking you? Because, of course, they have a lot of options out there. So why did they choose to invest in you, or why a VC chooses not to invest in you?
Yeah. So while healthcare is a crowd, you can say crowded space, it's also extremely federated, right? So with each disease specific, there are a multitude of problems that you're solving. So with cancer, or with second opinions, or with mental health, there's a multitude of problems that need to be solved. And so innovation, in my opinion, is necessary to push the needle because there's no way that the existing system will be able to innovate fast enough to keep up with all of the issues that patients face getting high quality care at a lower cost as well for the system. We also need to showcase strong clinical, that we've done a strong clinical work as well, and that we can prove an ROI. And that takes a long time in healthcare. It's one of the most difficult things as a startup is not only do contracting cycles with providers take significantly longer than in other industries, you're also waiting about a year or more to get insights on patients and that feedback loop to be completed between the treatment, your intervention, and the outcome. And so for startups, that can mean the difference between the end of their runway or succeeding. And so we need to prove that both we're different and we're differentiated, that we have the right team structure to execute.
Can you repeat the question?
So I'm just trying to understand as to, because there's so many different startups in this field, there's a lot of excitement, which is the good part. Mm-hmm. The challenging part is how do you get attention of the VCs? Why would they invest in you and not somebody else, right? So what are the challenges, what are the questions you get from the investing community?
Yeah, so Quartet just finished its Series D round, wrapped that up earlier this year. So they've given us quite a long runway to work with, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to prove that ROI over time. The second thing that's key is having wonderful partnerships with our customers. And so we are very fortunate to have had some great partnerships with Blue Cross Blue Shield North Carolina, most recently Centene, and other truly innovative healthcare companies and insurance companies. So I think that's the key, is great partnerships, good people, strong leadership, and clinical being very embedded into everything we do, and the patient at the center.
Okay. So one part is having a compelling value proposition, which is distinctive, and you have a competitive mode. The other part is having a business model. Mm-hmm. So what is your business model, and how is that working out?
Yeah. So the near-term business model for Project Ronin is a typical software as a service model. And so clinicians that use the Project Ronin platform are gaining efficiencies through data that's contextualized to their patients at their fingertips. They're not digging around through multiple tabs of the EHR. So immediately, first and foremost, we're saving physicians and their care teams time. They're all on the same page coordinating care with the patient. And over time, what this does is it allows physicians, as they're choosing the right treatment pathway for patients and accelerating past maybe the first 1 or 2 standard of care treatments and to the third standard of care treatment that we know is right for that patient based on our predictive models as well as the experience. Once they get there, we're also improving outcomes for patients, keeping patients out of the ER by managing their symptoms. And so this aligns really nicely with the future of healthcare, which is going towards value-based care. And value-based care in oncology is very complex.
So our business model is centered around, at Quartet, the overall reduction in total cost of care. So as I was saying before, Quartet believes that getting patients access to mental health care can have a positive impact on their overall health, which in turn lowers the overall cost for the patient to both the health plan and health systems. So it's a ROI model for both health plans and health systems.
Okay. So it's actually fortunate that I have 2 women on the panel. Do you have any, on the personal side, any challenges of working in a startup as a women leader?
Not so far. So far, I think you have to be cognizant that you may be the only female in the room, specifically selling to healthcare executives. And I think I came from a long background of management consulting, so I'm used to that. But it also gives a competitive advantage. So you have a different perspective, and helping to raise those voices of other female startups, females within the startup is really important. And we focus at Project Ronin on diversity hiring as well. And so it can be difficult in the Valley to do that and to make sure that you're also hitting your aggressive timelines, finding the right talent, but focusing on that is really important, and so that you're not the only woman in the room for the rest of the company's existence.
Yes, and at Quartet, I'm extremely fortunate that it's a very deliberate decision to have 50% of our leadership team be female. We have many strong women role models at Quartet, and it's also a very, I believe because it's a mental health company, the culture there is very supportive of mothers, of people with families, and so I feel extremely fortunate to work there, where I have 2 children, 2 and 4, so parents out there know how that goes. And my daughter actually has cerebral palsy, so we deal with a lot of complex medical conditions for my daughter, and Quartet is so extremely supportive of women as mothers, as leaders, and it's wonderful.
Okay. So any last minute words about the ups and downs of working in a startup, and if some of people want to actually get into that space, because this is a huge opportunity in the medical field?
Yeah. So my background before I started at Quartet was working with electronic health record systems for health systems across the country. And when I made the decision to come to Quartet, it was a breath of fresh air. You have to be ready for the ups and the downs. You have to be very flexible and agile, but the power to change things in a very real way and a faster way than the traditional healthcare setting is wonderful.
Identify a particular challenge that you face that might highlight the difficulty of the startup world.
Sure. So I think a particular challenge that we faced at Quartet was just really trying to get our arms around the complexity that is healthcare. And so everyone in this room knows that. But really trying to account for the nuance of medicine and the multiple stakeholders involved, and then build technology quickly that can meet all of those needs simultaneously is a big challenge.
Okay. Susie, last minute words.
The biggest challenge, I think, for startups working specifically with providers and payers is the astute providers and payers will ask, well, where's your proof, right? And so you need to really find clinical champions, administrative champions who believe in your vision. And sometimes that can be far and few between. They may have other priorities, other companies, as you mentioned, knocking at their doors. And so really developing those partnerships over time is important, because those relationships, as you scale and grow, you'll go back to them again and again and again. And you may face different challenges with your product. Your beta version may not be exactly what you had planned, and so you have to have partners that are willing to stick around. And finding those first couple of key partners is probably one of the biggest challenges that a startup faces. And then as you have multiple partnerships and you're scaling, really retaining that focus, the focus of your strategy, the focus.
I think with all the technical difficulties, you actually did a wonderful. Thank you very much for your time, and appreciate the time of the audience as well.
Thank you.